This is an NBC News special report. Here's Lester Holt.
Good evening. We're coming on the air with breaking news of multiple attacks on U.S. forces in Iraq. Iran state news agencies saying that Iran is behind the attacks. Let's get right to NBC's Richard Engel. He's live in Iraq. Richard, what can you tell us?
So the Iranian official media says that the Revolutionary Guard is claiming responsibility. They also are putting out video, which they say are some of the rockets that were fired apparently from Iran at a U.S. air base here in Iraq, the Al-Assad air base. Military sources say that they took at least 6 rounds of what they described as rockets initially, that soldiers on the base took shelter in bunkers. If you look at the video, you can see at least 3 projectiles and hear the distinctive noise of what sound like jet engines. This would be a significant escalation. U.S. bases in this country sometimes come under attack from small rockets, but not long-range or medium-range ballistic missiles fired from Iran. The Iranian news agencies are also saying they're issuing threats, not just claiming responsibility, saying that there could be more attacks to come if the United States responds, and that Americans, they say, are advised to return to their bases and return home for their safety. So Iran definitely claiming credit and linking this explicitly to the killing of the General Qasem Soleimani, saying that this is part of Iran's revenge. They are putting out hashtags on social media saying decisive revenge, Lester.
And Richard, what do we know about the American presence at that base? How many, what the mission of the troops is there?
It is a very large base, and actually right now we can hear some helicopters above us right now. There were some explosions that we heard here in Erbil, where I am in northern Iraq. We are still trying to figure out what that was. So far, no word of casualties at the Assad air base, but I can tell you that a lot of military sources that I've been speaking to are very busy right now. They do not appear to be answering their phones. They're clearly working this story. The White House says that the president has been informed and is meeting with national security advisors. Not sure if this is over, if this was an initial assault, if this was Iran testing the waters, but it certainly got a lot of people's attention here with a rocket attack that Iran is claiming from the Revolutionary Guard, saying that it is part of revenge for the killing of the commander of Iranian Black Ops, Qasem Soleimani.
Any word on any casualties from this?
So far, we have not heard any word of casualties, only that troops were taking shelter in this base. It is a very large base. It is quite far, about 200 miles from the Iranian border. These bases are full of places where troops can take cover. So it would be very difficult for these kind of missiles, which do not have any kind of significant guidance system, as far as we know, to hit anything specific. But as far as we know, no casualties, and we're not aware of damage. There may have been damage. We just frankly don't know at this stage.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.